Hello students, today we will see the vitamin B12, which is very important. So we see only the digestion, absorption, transportation and storage of vitamin B12. The functions and sources, RDA and everything we will see in the next video. So here we see today the part is digestion, absorption, transportation and storage. So digestion occurs in gastrointestinal tract, starts from a mouth and ends with an ileum. And the absorption takes place in the plasma, of course in the transportation also, and in tissues storage takes place. Tissues like liver and other tissues, storage of vitamin B12 takes place. So we will see how vitamin B12 getting digested from stage 1 to the last stage, the storage stage in tissues. So here we can see vitamin B12 will not be available in plants and also not available in humans and also not available in animal foods. Basically, bacteria present in animal gut or the bacteria present in human gut will synthesize vitamin B12. Here you can see this is a bacteria, it synthesizes the B12. So this B12 in animal foods, which means if you eat animal liver or kidney or whatever animal source, so animals synthesize vitamin B12 in their gut and stores the vitamin B12 in their liver. So if you eat non-veg foods, the non-veg foods contain protein including B12. So always B12 will be bound form with protein. So whenever you take animal foods, B12 will be in the form of protein bound B12. So animal foods containing B12 enters into the mouth and slowly into the stomach via esophagus. So in the stomach what happens? So as I already told you, B12 will be in the form of protein bound. B12 with protein form. See here, this is a B12 and here is the protein bound form. So the protein and vitamin B12. So here as soon as vitamin B12 along with protein reaches the stomach, what happens? Here we have two beautiful cells here you can see. So this black color one is called chief cells, CHIEF, chief cells. And here the red color one is parietal cell. So you can see here, I'm going to write over here, parietal cell. These two cells, they secrete some hormones. So chief cells, they secrete what? Pepsin. Chief cells secrete pepsin. Actually pepsinogen. This parietal cells secrete HCl. This HCl helps in conversion of pepsinogen into pepsin. See here, not pepsinogen, pepsin. Pepsin is synthesized. This pepsin acts on this vitamin B12 complex containing protein and vitamin B12. Pepsin acts on protein plus vitamin B12. As soon as pepsin acts on vitamin B12 and protein complex, this protein along with vitamin B12 is there, no, the bound form protein will be degraded. Will be degraded by the action of pepsin. Protein part will be degraded and vitamin B12 here is remaining. See, this vitamin B12 is alone now. Now you can see vitamin B12 is alone. This pepsin has one function, as I already told you, that it degrades the protein. Not only one single function, not only it degrades the protein, this pepsin also sends a signal to the salivary glands. So this is salivary gland. So salivary gland, as soon as salivary glands receive signal from pepsin, these salivary glands produce a protein called cobalamin. This cobalamin is a R protein, you can say. R protein. Cobalamin, the nature of this cobalamin is protein in form. So you can also pronounce it as R protein. This R protein comes into the action now by the signal of pepsin. This R protein or cobalamin comes into the stomach, esophagus. The way how this protein B12 complex comes into the stomach, in the same way R protein or cobalamin comes into the stomach. In the stomach, cobalamin or R protein now binds with B12. So I am indicating with a other color. So this is a blue color. Now B12 along with cobalamin. Cobalamin B12 complex, or you can also pronounce it as R protein B12 complex. Now this R protein B12 complex enters into the first part of the small intestine, which is duodenum. As I already written here, I already wrote here duodenum part labeled here. You can see in the duodenum here exactly at the starting point of the duodenum you have a pancreas. So this pancreas, as we all know, pancreas is an organ, synthesizes proteolytic enzymes. They digest the proteins. So this B12 and cobalamin complex comes into the duodenum first part. So here B12 along with or bound form of cobalamin. So now what happens? This cobalamin, by the action of pancreatic proteases acts on this cobalamin protein and degrades them off, as already the protein with B12 is degraded by the pepsin, no? So in the same way the pancreatic proteases degrades the cobalamin. So cobalamin is degraded, here the degraded products, and B12 again alone. So then now alone B12 needs one other binder to reach the destination. So now B12 is alone. Now what happens? I already told you about this parietal cell which secretes the HCl. Not only HCl, now remember the parietal cell secretes one other protein called IEF. Here HCl already secreted, HCl activated the pepsinogen into pepsin, and intrinsic factor is also synthesized. This intrinsic factor comes all the way to the duodenum where B12 is alone. Now B12 alone form and along with this intrinsic factor. Now this intrinsic factor is added. Let me change the color. So this is a intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor and B12 is formed. Now this intrinsic factor passes through the duodenum and enters into the jejunum. See here, it passes all the way and finally enters into the ileum part, which is the last part of small intestine. In the ileum, you can take one single cell from a ileum. Over here you can see single cell. I am zooming it out over here. So this is a mucosal cell of the ileum. What happens? Here we have intrinsic factor with vitamin B12. Intrinsic factor plus B12 complex is there. B12 is bound form with intrinsic factor. So this intrinsic factor in a mucosal cell binds with a specific receptor called intrinsic factor receptor. This whole complex binds with this one. See here, intrinsic factor B12 binds with the receptor of mucosal cell of the ileum and enters inside the mucosal cell. Once intrinsic factor and B12 internalizes inside the mucosal cell, what happens? This intrinsic factor will come out. Intrinsic factor will come out from a B12 and methyl group present in the mucosal cell adds to the B12. Then methyl B12 is formed. You can see how we studied. Again I am going to repeat in a nutshell. So bacteria synthesizes vitamin B12 that we are taking. So in the form of animal foods, fish, liver, pork and everything we are having. So the B12 entering inside the stomach, as soon as B12 enters, as we already discussed, B12 is always present with protein bound form. So the protein bound form and B12 enters. As soon as this form is entered, immediately chief cells secreted pepsinogen. That pepsinogen will be activated by the HCl of parietal cells and pepsin is formed. This pepsin degrades the protein bound form with B12. So protein is separated from B12. B12 is alone. Not only degrading the protein, pepsin also sends a signal to salivary glands. Then immediately salivary gland synthesizes cobalamin, which is also known as R protein. This R protein and this B12 forms a complex. R protein B12 complex. Now this R protein B12 complex passes through the duodenum and enters into the first part of the duodenum. So in the first part of the duodenum, what happens? By the action of pancreatic proteases, this B12 and R protein complex will be degraded again. Again B12 will come out and binds with intrinsic factor which was synthesized by the parietal cells. Now this IFB12, intrinsic factor B12, enters into the ileum. In the ileal mucosal cell, it internalizes by with the help of the receptor IR, intrinsic factor receptor, and enters inside the mucosal cell. In the mucosal cell, intrinsic factor will come out and methyl group will be added to the B12. Now the B12 is called as methyl B12 or methyl cobalamin. B12 in diet, usually we call the B12 vitamin as cobalamin in a dietary form. So this methyl B12 now will be entering into the plasma. So this is called absorption part. So from a digestion, from ileum mucosal cell to the plasma is called absorption. So B12 absorbs into the plasma in the form of methyl. So methyl cobalamin is getting absorbed into the plasma. Now the methyl B12 is absorbed. As soon as the B12 is absorbed into the plasma, what happens? Immediately TC1, which is called transcobalamin 1. This transcobalamin 1 comes and binds with this B12. See, transcobalamin B12 combines and transcobalamin 1 B12 is formed. So 100% B12 if you take, among 100%, 90% will be bound form with transcobalamin 1 and the rest 10% will go straight and binds with transcobalamin 2. Transcobalamin 1 B12, transcobalamin 1 and B12 combination is 90% and transcobalamin 2 B12 is 10%. So this transcobalamin 1 B12 formed in a first step will go up like this. So here transcobalamin 1 B12 and enters into the tissue for storage purposes, different tissues. And now when comes to the B12, remaining 10% of B12, this remaining 10% of B12 combines with transcobalamin 2 and it goes like this and enters into the remaining tissues. And like a little amount of transcobalamin 2 B12 form will enter into the liver also, and in the liver transcobalamin 2 will come out. Here while going, transcobalamin 2 will come out and only methyl cobalamin enters into the liver. In the liver, methyl cobalamin will be converted to adenosyl B12 or adenosyl cobalamin, which is a stored form of B12 in the liver. So here you can see this is what the digestion and transportation in a plasma and storage occurs in the tissues. So digestion, absorption, transportation and storage of vitamin B12 is very important. Thank you for listening. If you like the video, please share, subscribe, and if you have any queries, please put that query in a comment box. Thank you.